Friendship between nations is often built on trust, cooperation, and mutual respect. But in the complex world of global politics, not every country that claims to be a friend truly has good intentions. Some nations maintain close ties with India in trade, culture, or diplomacy, yet their actions behind the scenes tell a different story. Whether it's supporting rival countries, interfering in India's internal matters, or prioritizing their own gains over genuine partnership, these nations show that not all friendships are sincere. In this video, we uncover the top 10 countries that act like India's friends but are not for India's good, revealing who's playing the double game and why it matters for India's future. 10. China. While China maintains official diplomatic ties and engages in trade with India, its actions often contradict the image of friendship. Border disputes, particularly in the Ladakh region, have led to multiple standoffs. Despite participating in economic dialogues, China frequently blocks India's strategic moves on global platforms like the UN. It also maintains strong ties with Pakistan, India's rival, and invests heavily in projects within disputed territories. Furthermore, Chinese products dominate Indian markets, creating a trade imbalance. Beijing's infrastructure expansion in the Indian Ocean also raises security concerns. In short, while China talks of cooperation, its strategic behavior often undermines India's security, economic stability, and geopolitical influence. 9. Pakistan. Although Pakistan occasionally expresses interest in peace talks, its relationship with India remains riddled with deep mistrust. Islamabad's official statements sometimes promote dialogue, but cross-border tensions and incidents undermine these gestures. Militant activities and unresolved disputes, especially over Kashmir, strain any chances of genuine friendship. Pakistan's alliances with countries that oppose India's regional ambitions further complicate relations. Even during humanitarian crises, cooperation is minimal. Trade and cultural exchanges remain limited, overshadowed by security concerns. While the idea of friendship is sometimes presented in diplomatic settings, the underlying hostility, competitive regional policies, and conflicting national interests make Pakistan more of a rival than a true friend to India's progress and stability. 8. Turkey. Turkey publicly advocates for stronger ties with India, especially in trade and tourism. However, its consistent political stance on Kashmir often aligns with Pakistan's position, straining bilateral relations. Turkish leaders have openly criticized India's internal policies, which is perceived as interference in domestic affairs. Ankara also strengthens defense and economic cooperation with Pakistan, sending a clear signal about its geopolitical leanings. While Turkey invites Indian businesses and tourists, it simultaneously supports narratives in international forums that challenge India's sovereignty on sensitive issues. The mixed signals from Ankara, promoting cultural exchange on one hand but undermining India diplomatically on the other, create a relationship that appears friendly but often works against India's long-term strategic interests. 7. Nepal. Nepal shares deep cultural, historical, and economic ties with India, yet recent years have seen an increase in political tensions. While Nepal's leaders speak of brotherly relations, they have occasionally taken steps that strain the friendship, such as publishing controversial political maps claiming Indian territory. Kathmandu has also welcomed Chinese investments in infrastructure, giving Beijing a stronger foothold in South Asia, which complicates India's regional influence. Trade blockades, disputes over borders, and nationalist rhetoric further test bilateral trust. Although millions of Nepalis work in India and benefit from open borders, the political leadership's shifting alliances and provocative decisions sometimes reveal a relationship that is more opportunistic than genuinely supportive of India's national interests. 6. Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka and India share strong cultural and historical links, but recent events show that Colombo's policies do not always serve India's interests. While accepting India's financial aid and investment, Sri Lanka has simultaneously deepened ties with China, allowing Beijing to lease the Hambantota port, a strategic location in the Indian Ocean, for decades. This move raises security concerns for India. Sri Lanka's decisions in international forums, especially regarding maritime boundaries and fisheries, sometimes go against Indian interests. Although the two countries engage in cultural diplomacy and trade, Sri Lanka's balancing act between India and China often leans toward benefiting itself, even if it means compromising on commitments that would strengthen India's regional influence. 5. Canada. Canada maintains large-scale educational and trade relations with India and hosts a significant Indian diaspora. However, its political stance on sensitive issues often strains the relationship. The Canadian government has been criticized for allowing anti-India separatist activities, particularly those linked to the Khalistan movement, to operate openly. Public statements by Canadian leaders on India's internal matters, especially those regarding Punjab and human rights, are perceived in New Delhi as interference. Despite ongoing trade discussions and people-to-people connections, these political tensions create mistrust. Canada's selective diplomatic support, combined with its tolerance for groups that challenge India's sovereignty, reveals a friendship that is beneficial only when it aligns with Canada's domestic political interests. 4. Australia. Australia has strengthened its trade, education, and defense partnerships with India, presenting itself as a strong ally in the Indo-Pacific. However, its actions occasionally reflect a self-serving agenda rather than genuine concern for India's growth. Canberra has been accused of prioritizing economic ties with China over standing firmly with India on critical security issues. Reports of racism and discrimination against Indian students have also strained perceptions of friendship. Additionally, while Australia participates in strategic forums like the Quad, its commitment to India's causes sometimes appears lukewarm. This creates a relationship where cooperation is selective, focused on mutual gain, but lacking the deeper trust expected from a true strategic partner. 3. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia maintains growing economic ties with India, particularly in energy trade and investment. However, it often adopts diplomatic positions that don't fully support India's regional concerns. Riyadh has historically maintained close relations with Pakistan, offering political and financial support that indirectly challenges India's strategic interests. While the Saudi leadership promotes stronger business and cultural exchanges with New Delhi, it rarely takes a strong public stand in India's favor on contentious issues. Furthermore, its alliances in the Islamic world sometimes align with countries critical of India's domestic policies. As a result, the relationship remains transactional, benefiting both economies, but not always aligned with India's long-term geopolitical goals. 2. Qatar. Qatar projects itself as a friendly Gulf nation with significant investments in India and a reliance on Indian labor. However, Doha's political actions sometimes contradict this friendship. Its media outlets, especially Al Jazeera, have aired critical coverage of India's internal policies, often perceived in New Delhi as biased. Qatar also maintains close ties with Pakistan, occasionally supporting positions in international forums that counter India's stance. While it benefits from Indian labor and imports, it does little to advocate for India's geopolitical concerns. The relationship appears cordial on the surface but often lacks genuine diplomatic alignment, making Qatar more of a strategic opportunist than a consistent friend to India. 1. United States. The United States presents itself as India's natural ally and strategic partner, especially in countering China's influence. However, its approach is primarily driven by its own geopolitical and economic interests. Washington often pressures India on trade policies, human rights issues, and defense purchases, particularly regarding Russian weapons. U.S. support is frequently conditional, shifting with political administrations and global priorities. It also imposes visa restrictions and tariffs when convenient, despite promoting bilateral cooperation. While India and the U.S. share defense agreements, technology partnerships, and cultural exchanges, the American stance can quickly change if national interests diverge. This makes the friendship highly beneficial to the U.S., but not always equally advantageous for India.